Thank you for watching. Do you have any question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu and his team for keeping us safe during our time here. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, and a warm welcome to everyone joining us online. Kin cha quý vị, tên tôi là Subha. Well, that was my best attempt at trying to speak Vietnamese. In case that didn't quite come out right, what I meant was, hello everyone, my name is Subha from VNNIC, which is the Asia Pacific Network Information Center. It is with great pride that we commence VNNIC 60 with a traditional festival drum performance called Chang Hoi, celebrating the rich culture of Vietnam. Please be aware it will be loud for a brief moment, so if you need to step outside, please feel free to do so. So I'll give that a moment if you want to step outside. All right, looks like we're all ready to enjoy the performance. Can we please give a big round of applause for our performers?
Văn chương chép lấy đôi câu thơ, sự nghiệp tua nhìn phải đạo trung, trừ độc, trừ gián, trừ bạo, có nhân, có trí, có anh hùng.
Huyền thoại
How brilliant was that performance? Can we hear a big round of applause for our performers? They were like superheroes on stage. So we're very thankful for that great performance. It is my great honor now to welcome you all to the opening ceremony of APNIC 60 here in beautiful Da Nang. We're privileged to gather here in Vietnam and to be hosted by Vietnam Internet Network Information Center, known as VNNIC. I'd like to take a moment to welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Lê Ngoc Duc, Chairman of VNNIC Governing Board and representative of the Ministry of Science and Technology, Mr. Nguyen Hong Tăng, Director General, VNNIC, Mr. Kenny Wong, Chair, APNIC Executive Council. I'd also like to thank other distinguished representatives from VNNIC and our partner organizations. We're very grateful to the Ministry of Science and Technology and to VNNIC for hosting APNIC 60 and to everyone who has traveled to be here. Thank you. To those joining us remotely, we're delighted that you can be here with us. We encourage and welcome remote participation. Throughout the conference, APNIC staff are on Zoom to support you. We request everyone on site and online to share your highlights, pictures, and posts using the hashtag APNIC60. I'd like to call your attention to the code of conduct as displayed on the screen. Can we have the code of conduct, please? I'd like you all to briefly have a look through the code of conduct. This applies to all sessions and for all participants in person, online, and during social activities. We appreciate your consideration. In addition, please note, there are 5 trusted contacts at the conference, 2 from the community and 3 from APNIC staff. You can identify them by the vest or badge they're wearing. They're your first point of contact for any concerns related to bullying, harassment, discrimination, and other inappropriate behavior. All discussions with trusted contacts are confidential. Now, we're done with all the housekeeping notes, so let's start with the official proceedings. I'd like to invite Mr. Kenny Wong, Chair of APNIC Executive Council, to the stage for his opening remarks. Kenny, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to APNIC 60. I'd like to take this great opportunity to acknowledge our distinguished guests. First, I'd like to acknowledge our Lê Ngoc Duc, Chairman of VNNIC, and also representative of Ministry of Science and Technology. Thank you for your support to host APNIC 60 here. Thank you very much. Then I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Tan, DG of VNNIC. Thank you for your tireless preparation to make everything happen here in such a great manner. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful to introduce you to the APNIC 60 in the beautiful city of Vietnam. My name is Kenny Wong. On behalf of APNIC Executive Council, and I would like to thank you for joining us here. Actually, that's the second APNIC meeting in Vietnam. Our first APNIC meeting in Vietnam was in Hanoi, and that was in 2005. And during that time, actually only 9% of global internet population is from Asia Pacific region. Right now, it has been ballooned to up to 66% global internet population from Asia Pacific region. That's a great contribution from our community. And also the development of the internet in Vietnam is also very amazing. 75% of the population are internet users, and the IPv6 adoption rate is more than 61%. RPKI IPv4 router adoption rate more than 96%. That's very remarkable record from VNNIC community. Thank you very much. This event is a true community effort. We'd like to express our sincere gratitude to everyone who make it possible. Our deepest thanks go to our local host, VNNIC, for their incredible partnership and hard working, especially under the leadership of the chairman and DG. Their support has been essential to bring us together here. And we also like to thank a lot of our generous sponsors, and including AWS, VeriSign, and I think UpG. Of course, we still have like CNNIC, TWNIC, JPNIC, KISA, NIC, HKIX, Internet Society, and Flex Optics, and quite a lot of sponsors also sponsor this trip. And thank you very much. Actually, your general support is great, and also your commitment to the APNIC community and to the future of the internet in our region is what allows us to hold such important discussion. And your support help us to grow, innovate, and continue our mission. Thank you very much. So over the next few days, we have great program ahead of us. We will discuss critical topics, share new ideas, and work together to build a more stable, secure, open internet for the Asia Pacific. So please, we can use the conference as an APNIC is a forum. It's built by the collaboration. This meeting allows us to connect and learn from each other, and also strengthen the bond that allow us to make our work so successful. So I'd like to encourage you, try to take the full advantage of this week, attend section, ask question. Also, the most importantly, make a network with your peer, and please enjoy everything Thailand has to offer. And I wish you a very successful and memorable APNIC 60. Cảm ơn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenny, for your remarks. It is now my great privilege to invite Mr. Nguyen Hong Tang, Director General of VNNIC, and our gracious host to deliver the welcome remarks on behalf of the Ministry of Science and Technology and VNNIC, and to officially declare APNIC 60 open. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Kenny Wong, Chair of APNIC EC, Mr. Jiong Lau, Director General of APNIC, Mr. Lê Ngọc Đức, Chairman of VNNIC Governing Board, Representative of Ministry of Science and Technology, APNIC member, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Vietnam Internet Network Information Center, VNNIC, I'm delighted to welcome all of you to APNIC 60 in Da Nang, a dynamic, open, and beautiful coastal city in center of Vietnam. It's a great honor for VNNIC to be a local host of this important event. We are truly happy to see the APNIC community gathering here, not only exchange knowledge and experiment, but also to connect and collaborate for a better internet for all. Distinguished guests, Internet today play important role in socio-economic development, innovation, and digital transformation. It's no longer just a technology, it's an essential digital infrastructure and development space that connect people, nations, and ideas. In this journey, APNIC has long been a cornerstone of internet ecosystem in Asia Pacific. Throughout its role, internet number is resource management, community building, and capacity development. VNNIC foster the trust, resilient, sustainable growth for the internet in our region. VNNIC 60 is a great opportunity for us to stay up to date with emerging technology, share knowledge and solutions, and strengthen our community bonds. This year marks 25 years of VNNIC continued contribute for Vietnam internet development, and over 27 years since Vietnam first connect to the global internet. Vietnam has made remarkable progress. Now we are in the top 10 countries worldwide in IPv6 adoption, reaching 65%. In Vietnam, VNNIC commit to build a modern, safe, and inclusive infrastructure, working closely with the international and domestic stakeholders to boost the capacity and raise the awareness. Vietnamese internet community is growing rapidly with more technical talent, stronger cooperation, deeper integration with global internet initiative. We believe that VNNIC 60 is not only a technical forum, but also a meaningful event for connection, partnership, and inspiration. Together, we shape the future of internet in Asia Pacific and beyond. I hope you will find it week both fruitful and inspiring, and take some time to enjoy the culture, hospitality, and unique spirit of Da Nang. Don't miss local specialty like bánh xèo, Vietnamese pancake, and mì Quảng, Quảng style noodle, and bánh tráng cuốn thịt heo, pork with fresh vegetable and dry paper, and of course, fresh seafood. I wish VNNIC 60 a great success and hope you will enjoy your time in Da Nang. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen Hong Tan, for your inspiring remarks and for opening VNNIC 60. May I please request you to stay on stage? We'll do a group photo. May I please also invite on stage Mr. Kenny Wong, Mr. Lê Ngoc Duc, and Mr. Jorong Lo. Please join us on stage for a group photograph. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the keynote session. Let me introduce you to our first keynote speaker, Leslie Daigle. Leslie is the Chief Technical Officer and Internet Integrity Program Director at the Global Cyber Alliance. Please join me in giving Leslie a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you very much. And I am delighted to be here this morning, talking about many of the themes that have already been introduced by our introduction. I'd like to talk today a little bit about strengthening the internet's security while maintaining an open internet for everybody's use. So I'm sure I'm not the only person in the room who remembers when this computer was pretty cutting edge technology. But I'd like to remind all of us that when that was true, the world was a much simpler place. There were barely automated banking machines, let alone online banking. And as I said, simpler times and a lot fewer of the kinds of global attacks that are facilitated by today's technology. Which is not to say that we should go back to those times, but just to keep the last 30 years in perspective. So today, this is the overall outline of the presentation that I'd like to give. I'd like to talk about why securing the internet is hard, but yet important. And then I will give some concrete examples and data outlining some of what exactly is going on the internet as we speak, and then some theories of what we might be able to do about addressing those issues. And I'll end on an up note. There is the possibility of improving our approach to addressing security, but to give a spoiler alert, the improvement comes through collaboration. So as we know, the internet is built on collaboration and interdependence. And indeed, the power of the internet comes from harnessing the efforts of individual networks working together. So that can be really, really powerful, but it can also lead to creating a very complex attack surface and challenges to securing it. So I will talk about internet integrity, which is both security and accessibility across a resilient infrastructure. As I said, securing the internet is hard, and in a large part, it's because the internet is everywhere, everything everywhere all at once. And it's been that since long before that was an award-winning movie. So in order to be able to sit here and have a video conference back home, we rely on that infrastructure, which is basically oblivious to jurisdictional boundaries, and has resources that are registered in across the globe, used in different places, and hosted anywhere on the globe as well. That's kind of a requirement, but it's also a major challenge. Apparently, I don't have a back button. Well, I'll make it up as I go along. So normally when we think about securing things, we think about putting locks on doors and closing windows and blocking things. But for the internet, that doesn't really work because it's not possible to put the internet in a box, any box. So at the same time, in order for all of the applications and those online banking services and all the things that we rely on to run securely on top of the internet, we need an internet infrastructure which is itself secure. Because, as I say, you can't use two-factor authentication to get yourself out of the problems brought on by a routing hijack. So this is why securing the underlying layers of the internet really is important to all levels of use of the internet. So whose job is that anyway, to secure the internet? And I do mean securing the internet, not the World Wide Web, which is a separate thing. As I said earlier, it's challenging because the responsibility for the jurisdiction where the resources are registered may be different from where they're putting to use for hosting and whatnot. And the criminal actors that are using these resources may be in an entirely different jurisdiction. And I'll illustrate that later. So my argument is that in order to address this successfully, we have to treat it like a collective action problem. We all need to work together. So this is where the news is sort of scary in the sense that no one organization can solve the problem by itself or for itself. We have to be careful about what we do in terms of attempting to secure things as well, because making choices unilaterally can have ripple effects. If one network decides that it's going to solve its problem by blocking a different network, well, that means that the other network now has a new problem. So we have to agree on what are the right approaches to addressing security and work together. So with all that and agreeing that it's hard, why is it important? This is an example from the United States. In 2024, the United Health Group, a healthcare organization, noted that its earnings fell by more than 20% because of a cybersecurity attack. So here we are. It's not just about securing your network. It's about having an impact on real world businesses and people trying to live their everyday lives. So it impacts every industry. This is not just a science experiment anymore. This is our world. So we have to pay attention. And here are some of the attack campaigns that I will talk about a little bit later. These are all attacks that are carried out in small little bits of traffic, little transactions that you probably wouldn't even think about noticing, but that together they create a very large impact. So before we go on to that, let's think a little bit about how not to secure the internet. So this is a screenshot from one time I was sitting in Bangkok and I was attempting to have a look at my most recent pay stub from my work. And this is the message that I got from the company that is responsible for my company's pay service. They said, oh, we don't talk to Thailand. Now, why would they do that? Would they do that because they thought they had had too many attacks from Thailand? Would they do that because there are regulations in Thailand that make it hard for them to do business? And that's one of those ripple effects and negative externalities. Would they do that because they don't see a use case? They say, we don't have support companies in Thailand. Why would anybody in Thailand need to access us? It's like, but I wanted to access them. And then was this page even helpful, right? I mean, just telling me that they weren't going to talk to me. And the answer to that is, well, kind of, because some other services that I dealt with on that particular trip didn't give me a notice. They just gave me the spinning death and timeout on the website. So the whole point of this is it's not a good way to improve cybersecurity is not simply to block everything. The whole point of the internet is that you as a company shouldn't be thinking about what are the use cases for my customers. It should be accessible everywhere. So if blocking isn't the answer, then what? So the bad news is, bottom line up front, you can't secure the internet. You can't secure it in your own network. But together, we can make very large progress by working together. So at the Global Cyber Alliance, we look at the problem space in terms of the internet's names, numbers, and roots. And we have projects in each of these spaces. We have the Domain Trust Project, which focuses on trying to reduce the number and impact of registered criminally malicious names. And then we have the Aid Proxypot project, which focuses on collecting information about different attacks that are reaching across the globe to all open IPv4 ports. And I'll say a bit more about that because that's where I want to spend most of my time. And then we have, since a year and a half ago, we have the Manners project. We are acting as the secretariat for the mutually agreed norms for routing security. So focusing on some of the aid and proxypot information, let's look at some of these small attack traffic patterns. I don't want to miss this one, so let me make sure I click properly. I think it's loading. There we go. There we go. So this illustration is 144 seconds in the life of our global honey farm. All of those different lines are communications between some client and our host sensors. We have a honey farm of approximately 200 sensors that are deposited in networks across the globe, and they are collecting all of this unwanted traffic. And I call it unwanted traffic because these sensors are not advertising themselves as anything. They are simply look like little Linux boxes recording who is reaching out and touching them. And an important takeaway, apart from the fact that there's a lot of data, is that this is what we see reaching out to our honey farm is reaching out to every single open IPv4 port in the world. And as you can see, here's a very clear illustration that the attacks are not localized to any given region or any given jurisdiction, that devices are reaching out across the globe to poke and prod every single other device on the planet. And it's not just, this is not just about teenagers sitting in their parents' basements seeing if they can, reach some machine in another country. These are actually organized into campaigns, often organized into campaigns that have a big security impact. So APT36, one of the campaigns I had mentioned earlier, has a geopolitical intent. It still features persistent phishing, credential harvesting, and malware deployment with an aim to impact the Indian military and government sectors. So the other thing that we can see in the patterns of the traffic is that it demonstrates the weaponization of ISP infrastructure. So this is, again, not just little trivial things. This is what we saw in the data collected in our global honey farm with a massive spike at the very end of April. And looking at the source attack, the attack source networks, we can see that mostly these attacks came from network service providers and ISPs, as opposed to cloud providers and content providers, which are commonly large players in the space of hosting attack services for no real surprising reason. A different attack campaign that we looked at was the Red Tail campaign, and this is entirely different. It's financially motivated. So this campaign was focused on crypto mining and it had Lazarus-linked infrastructure. And the important thing to note in that is that the Lazarus campaign was known to have stolen significant quantities of cryptocurrency. So again, not trivial activities. But it highlights the fact that all of our economies are at risk with these campaigns that are playing out across the globe. So in terms of the attack flows that were targeting our Asia-Pacific-based sensors, we can see that a lot of the attacks came out of the US and Europe, attacking Asia-Pacific countries, Asia-Pacific economies' resources. But what we found in that is that it's really being funneled through proxies, is what I'm trying to say. So here's another reason not to simply block IP addresses, because that's not solving the problem. The bad actors who may be somewhere else entirely are just going to find other places to proxy their traffic. In terms of the attack campaign, we can see there was a major surge in April, but the infrastructure was persistent. So while it tailed off through June of this year, there was another surge in later July. In terms of the activity that we saw in the different economies that our sensors are placed in, overall, the attacks largely focused on the US, but the red highlighted bars here show the economies in the Asia-Pacific region, which also saw significant attacks. So this is not an abstract problem, and this is not somebody else's problem. This is a real problem, and it's a real problem here. Another espionage-based type campaign was the Kimsuki campaign, which instead of focusing on military infrastructure, was focused on softer targets like researchers and think tanks, organizations that are not normally focused primarily on securing themselves against remote attacks. And it exposes vulnerabilities in these targets as well, in many places across Asia-Pacific. And again, another graph showing the sources and targets and the very global reach of all of these attacks. And here I would draw your attention to the fact that this is an example showing that the hosting services were sources of many of these attacks that we saw in our honey farm. So in this case, it's not limited to ISPs and network service providers, and this is a much more normal distribution of source attacks. Yeah, and so this just shows again how the attacks played out by economy on a log scale, with the Asia-Pacific economies highlighted in red. Here again, we can see that it was again using resources in Europe largely to attack the Asia-Pacific locations. It's a scary world. Yeah, I'm going to skip over this. Just graphs showing that things can be very surprising and very large spikes. And with this slide, you will note that on the left-hand side, I've not identified the ASNs. I'm just trying to communicate that we can see where these attacks are coming from. We can see the networks that are sourcing the attacks on our sensors. And I deliberately don't care to expose which networks they are, because that's not my point. My point is that they are happening and that they can be seen. So one final campaign that I want to touch on is the Dark Pink campaign, which is, again, a little bit different, but focusing on military again in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia. And it's tied to yet other campaigns, because these are all just evolutions of similar attackers. And again, here we have content providers and network network service providers as the main source of these attacks. You can see that these attacks play out over time with surges. Sometimes they're, larger spikes or lesser spikes, but they're persistent. The infrastructure exists. They go dark for a little bit, and then there's another surge. It's an ongoing onslaught on all of the infrastructure everywhere. Again, we can see where it's coming from. We can see that some networks are very much more implicated than others. And that's a discussion for another day. So with all that, if we can see them, and we know that it has these campaigns have very real impact on world affairs, maybe what we could do is stop them before they become multinational trans-network affairs. Maybe we could work on finding ways to stop them in their source networks instead of just seeing them always launch and attack somebody else. So one of the things that I like to do in a presentation like this is to show you the kinds of attacks that are actually, show you the numbers of attacks that are hitting us. So I did a presentation at RIPE in May. So I showed for 3 European networks, the amount of traffic that we saw hitting our sensors for Q1 of 2025. So in preparing for this presentation, I thought I should have a look at 5 networks from the Asia Pacific region and see how much traffic we see from them for the first half of this year. So you'll note that the Q1 numbers are really high. So we're getting a lot of traffic from those European networks and not very much from the Asia Pacific ones. And I will note that the 5 Asia Pacific networks that I chose all are registered for this conference. This is not somebody else's problem. This is our problem. But then I normalized it for size of network, and we can see that the European networks are not actually that much more are not showing that many more attacks than the Asia Pacific based ones. And some networks clearly are having worse years than others. Really worse years than others. I've just added the first Asia Pacific network that I had been looking at into this mix, and it dwarfs, the one spike dwarfs all of the other networks. So all that to say that there's a lot of attack traffic out there. It is our problem. And you could say, well, it's small little transactions, it's not impacting my bandwidth. I've heard that explanation. I've also heard, well, it's not impacting my customers, so I'm not worried about it. Although sometimes it is. And I will point out that all of this attack traffic is impacting the value of your IPv4 addresses. Good thing you're all using IPv6, right? Because every time a network puts your IPA space on a block list, the value of your IPv4 address goes down. This is an example of what happens in a cloud provider. This is one cloud provider that has launched attacks against some of its own customers. I mean, not the cloud provider. The cloud provider is hosting attackers who are attacking others of the cloud provider's customers, which demonstrates that sometimes, in fact, it's not impacting my customers assertion is not right. So that's a whole lot of negativity, a whole lot of, oh my goodness, it's terrible. So I'd like to frame up things in terms of a success story. So in general, the Global Cyber Alliance, where I work, aims to frame things up in terms of identifying, putting numbers on problem spaces, and then working with the entities that can actually do something about it, which is the network infrastructure operators, because only you can change what happens in your networks and in your DNS services, et cetera. And we'd like to build communities around figuring out what those solutions are and to implement them, which is exactly the blueprint that was used by the Internet Society for creating the manners, mutually agreed norms for routing security just over a decade ago. Working with network operators, the absolute minimum security baseline, the norms were defined and expressed in terms of manners actions. And so this was not about the Internet Society or anybody else telling network operators to do. It was literally a question. What can you do about it? So today we have the manners program, and the implementation of those manners actions is measured in our observatory. And in cheerful graph, you can see that over the course of of the last few years, we've seen a general uptick in terms of the numbers of manners participants. That's the top line. The black line is an uptick in the number of deployed ROAs, and then a general downtick in terms of the number of routing incidents and culprits. So that was a lot. I saw people taking pictures as I was presenting, but these slides will be available for download, and I'm counting on you downloading them and reading through them in more detail. And I have also listed some resources on the final slide of the deck, including pointers to the blog post by my colleague Michael Donde, who did all of the research around the attack campaigns. And the blog posts give a lot more detail about, what was seen in our data and what the implications are. So I encourage you to have a look at them. But the key things that I would really like you to take away from all of this discussion this morning is that there are real threats out there on the internet that have real impact on the everyday life of everybody on the face of this planet. And some of them are in fact launching from your networks. The only way that we can stop this kind of activity is by working together and identifying what are the things that you can do to stop those things in your network before they get out and become problems for other people. We do have success stories. The world does still know how to collaborate. The best solutions come from industry consensus. So if the industry can figure out what to do about this, we can help make sure that more people do the right things. And as a final thought, I will leave you with, I believe in collaboration over blocking every day. So let's do it. Thank you very much. Is there time for questions?
Thank you, Leslie, for that insightful keynote. If you have any questions about Leslie's presentation, please do ask her. She's here at the conference. Thank you. Our second keynote speaker is a distinguished leader in Vietnam's internet community. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Vu Te Binh, Vice President and Secretary General of Vietnam Internet Association, to deliver his keynote address. Can we have a round of applause, please?
One.
Yeah, click on.
Up there. Okay.
In fact, this one.
Back here.
This one. The red. That. Front. They're resetting it for you. So.
Check. All right. So good afternoon. It's my great honor to be here to share to you some information about Vietnam internet landscape, and thanks for VNNIC, localhost, and VNNIC to invite association and myself to be here to have the chance to share with you some perspective related to the internet development in Vietnam. We choose the topic is about modernizing Vietnam internet, and it's related to the cloud, DC, CDN, and sure, IPv6 only. So because it's nearly the lunchtime, so I try to make it very quick, and you will have a wonderful lunchtime. All right. Okay. So why we choose this topic? So first one is alignment to VNNIC priorities. So focus on IPv6 network infrastructure and emerging technologies, and it's also matching to the Vietnamese strategy. You know that Vietnam have some very big change in leadership from the party and from the government last year, and many things change, and wouldn't be a lot of investment and efforts from the government to ICT and DX, digital transformation. Also, it's related to the regional relevance and also future vision. First, we come to, I think you get some impression on Mr. Thang opening about how internet development in Vietnam. So the adoption of internet in Vietnam is very impressive. We have like more than 80 million internet users. So the newly updated data from authority, and adoption of IPv6 is more than 60%. And we are in the top, I think, top 10 or something like that, and very strong growth in, especially in mobile broadband, the fiber, and also online services. But why the modernization matters? It's surely because it's very fast development. So the capacity and performance rising, traffic demand, so need the DC, cloud, and CDN, etc. And about IPv6 only future, it's still a lot of challenges, and we can talk about it later on. And this is the backbone. We need the foundation for the smart cities, for e-government application, and also for 5G and IoT. And one thing which Vietnam government expressed some time ago about potential to be a kind of like ASEAN digital hub. We know that there's still a lot of things to reach that dream or something like that. Wow. No? Okay, so I will go very quick in some perspective on that topic about DC data center, about cloud, about CDN, IPv6, and hope that you would have some insights about Vietnamese situation. So first about DC. We have a so-called the community Vietnam Cloud and DC Club. It belongs to the association gathering all the players in the cloud and data center market. We have now not so many, about 15 cloud and DC providers in Vietnam. And annually we release a kind of annual report to show the data and landscapes about DC market by gathering data from the providers. Last year report, I mean the 2024 report, the total revenue for Vietnam, it's about like 120 million. So gathering from the provider. It's a little bit different with other sources, and the growth rate is about 20%. And the big provider, the big players grew strongly, about 20, and others about just 40. And I think many of you know about the current situation in Vietnam, just few players. And among them, you know already, top providers are Viettel, almost 50%, and VNPT, FPT, and CMC. And most of them, with the Vietnamese situation, most of them are state-owned company. The number is about 19,000 racks and 45 megawatt in capacity. All right. So, but this year have a lot of announcement, newly planned, and it's a huge plan. For example, Viettel announced to build like hyperscale campus, 140 meg. CMC also just announcing a huge investment, up to 500 million expansion. And FPT have just announced the biggest number of racks in Ho Chi Minh City. So most of the plan for DC are by the big guys and others. So for example, Da Nang, last week we have the center to announce the so-called quite a big one, 10 meg in Da Nang by this center. And the local company here, I mean, IPTP with some investment outside. All right. So you got some information about existing DC in Vietnam. We have about 22, mostly based in Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, and partially in Da Nang. And upcoming 12, and mostly in the big city. Some information about market capacity projected can nearly 1,000 megawatt by 2030. And the co-location revenue could be projected up to like $1.4 billion by 2030. And in Vietnam, the key operators are Viettel, VNPT, FPT, and CMC Telecom. And on those big guys, CMC Telecom is a private one with foreign investor. All right. So compare with other countries in the ASEAN region, Vietnam is still very limited. It's small in compare with, like, for example, Singapore or Thailand. So, and sure, we have challenges related to the power supply and to the international connectivities. You know, Vietnam has now like having 5 or 6 submarine cables to connect to the regional hub in Hong Kong or Singapore. All right. So it's just about the development in Southeast Asia could be the major hotspot for DC. All right. So this is DC and ready to the cloud. The market research about cloud in Vietnam is very limited. So we got some information from other sources. So this is just giving some impression about APAC market. And this is from our club, VNCDC. It's quite small. For the last year report, it's just about 4,000 billion down. And the top 4, Viettel, FPT, CMC, and VNG, occupy about more than 80% of market share. And for the cloud, it's growing about exceeding about 30%. And among them, nearly 70% is infrastructure as a service. All right. So we got some statistic from outside sources. So they forecast that Vietnam cloud market revenue can reach like almost more than 700 in early 2024, and 1.2 in this year, something like that. So that show that the market research in Vietnam is very different from many different sources. Okay, and the other sources to say that Vietnam cloud computing market will have the compound average growth rate is about almost 11%. But anyway, very promising for Vietnam to develop the cloud market. Okay, CDN. We We also quite lack of information related to the CDN because most of the CDN providers in Vietnam are from outside. All right. We just give you some information from rapid growth in APAC. And here in Vietnam, this is from outside. All right, so it is about Vietnam. They expected like the CAGR about 30% from 2024 to 2032, and market value just very like limited, about almost 70 million US. And the bank sector, financial sector is to be the largest end user, and also healthcare sector to be the remain fast growing users. Right. So this show about OTT video and also video streaming in projection. About the next slides will show you some landscapes about the contents in Vietnam. So the following two slides. This is how Vietnamese internet users use different media types for the internet. And yep, here by the report, average hours the Vietnamese internet users use like every day about 6 hours to be on the internet. Among them, about 2 hours with the social media. And in the slide, in details, we have a lot of information about number of users for Facebook, TikTok, and also some other media. So the internet using of the users, internet user in Vietnam is wide consuming. I mean, so almost all day online, something like that. So it creates a lot of demands for traffic and also about cloud. So the last pillar, we just go through some data about IPv6, and I'm sure that you know already the development of IPv6 through the leading in Vietnam by VNNIC. So I will just go very fast to that. So Vietnam has a roadmap in IPv6 and IPv6 only. And it is planned on 2030, so just 5 years. And officially, Vietnam stopped using IPv4 and have IPv6 only. We are not sure if it is feasible, but it is a plan. And this is the ambitions of the government as well. And some information about IPv6 measurement in Vietnam. Top 2 in ASEAN, or top 10 in the world. So not bad. And it's still increasing. 55% totally IPv6 users, and among them, more than 80% with the mobile. Mobile broadband in Vietnam is very good, and 50% of fiber. Yeah, and about policy. Yeah, Mr. Đức and Mr. Thắng spend a lot of effort to help the government have a lot of policy every year. So I will go fast to that. Yeah, a lot of policy to lead the industry and also government agency to go through IPv6 adoption and towards to IPv6 only. And this year, the newest policy to set approving the strategy of IPv6 and IPv6 only in Vietnam during the next term 5 years with with a very clear objective and check, okay. All right. So thanks to the efforts of VNNIC, the industries working together to follow the roadmap of the government for IPv6 transition. And we are confident that in terms of IPv6, Vietnam is still in the good track. Okay, so that's about some information, data from different sources to give you an impression about Vietnamese internet picture. And now there are some challenges we identify. It's determined about different perspectives. So DC, the challenge will be high investment costs, regulatory gaps, and especially the power, energy. For CDN, we have limited local presence, and we have also limited interconnection. So making the latency still a challenge, and it's a question about quality. I mean, the quality of services. And for cloud, it's there are concerns about data sovereignty and the cloud ecosystem in Vietnam. Most of the Vietnamese enterprise are using public cloud from outside, from Amazon, Google, Microsoft. And I think you will know about movement of VMware when the acquired by Broadcom, and it's a change of policy. And now there is a question about cloud in Vietnam, how to deal with the new policy from VMware. And this is a big question. About cybersecurity, sure, Vietnam has, you know that Vietnam has some change in the top regular authority about cybersecurity. So now from this year, the authorities belong to Ministry of Public Security and merging. And there will be some change in cybersecurity regulation this year. And that shows that cybersecurity threats are rising among not only for users, enterprise, but also for government concern. And IPv6 only? Yeah. The challenge about legacy system upgrades and application compatibility issues. And this is detailed, and we also have some overall challenges. So first, limited R&D budget. Some numbers say that Vietnam just have under 0.5% to spend for ICT R&D. So a lot of like core technology, for example, about DC, cloud, CDN, IPv6, for example, so rely on global vendors. You know, for DC, Vietnam has almost very difficult to find a good company to design, to set up. So almost all have to import from outside. And we have insufficient market research. It was a challenge for us to get data about the industry or market. So lack of systematic market intelligence. So it's leading to fragmented initiative for planning, something like that. We have weak industry collaboration, right? Limited local enterprise involvement. So within the Internet Association, we are very aware of that. We formed the VNCDC on 2019, and every year when we produce the report, it's always local, I mean the internal discussion about number, etc. So it's not easy to have collaboration. And sure, we need stronger ecosystem. And we also have some other structural barriers like like power supply, like data sovereignty concern, or limited CDN present, and sure, cybersecurity threats. So there are some suggestions about strategy, and for DC and cloud, together with the plan of government. So Vietnam would like to expand domestic data center and cloud service. For CDN, it's not clear yet, but we think about strengthening the local CDN deployment and the interconnection to reduce latency and international transits. So now it's still lack of information about those topics in Vietnam. For cybersecurity, yep. So with the new authority, new upcoming cybersecurity law, I think government will invest a lot, not only in policy but also in some kind of national SOC training and boosting the regional cooperation. Right. About digital divide, in Vietnam we still have some place that internet cannot to be in. So it's about extending broadband internet to the rural or underserved areas. I think you got some news that Starlink will have the service availability in Vietnam this year, hopefully by the last quarter, and they are winning the landing station, and hopefully Vietnam will have Starlink services before 2026. And about IPv6 only, so accelerate from the DUN stack to transfer to IPv6 only, and following the national roadmaps and operator commitments and application readiness. And we just only a few slide left. Okay, so we have some messages. So for the government, so invest more in our R&D core technologies. With the new leadership, new policy, we hope that more resources will be put in the R&D efforts to core technologies, and also to boost cybersecurity frameworks or fostering the plan for international connectivities. The government have planned to expand more submarine cables down south to Malaysia, to Singapore, etc. And hopefully we can follow that plan. And for local business, to build more intelligent system, foster industry collaboration, and expand the local CDN presence. For regional internet community, we would like to send a message to promote knowledge sharing, to coordinate standard development, and support the sustainable infrastructure, especially fostering collaboration with IXP, DC, CDN, and IPv6. So the last one, it's the core for the community, and we hope you will have a wonderful lunch later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vu Te Bin, for your valuable perspective. Can you please remain on stage? I'd now like to invite Kenny to accompany Leslie back on stage for a little token of appreciation. Kenny will be presenting souvenirs to our keynote speakers. Thank you very much to Kenny and our keynote speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the opening ceremony of APNIC 60. We are aware of the issues with the Wi-Fi, but we are definitely working very hard to fix it. Apologies for the inconvenience. Before we close, a few quick announcements. Lunch will be served at the Indochine restaurant and the Ocean Room right after this session. If you need guidance, please speak to one of our friendly APNIC staff or see us at the registration desk. The next sessions will begin at 2:30 p.m. in Da Nang 1 and Da Nang 2, 3. Please note there will be 2 parallel tracks running through the conference. The recording and slides from today's sessions will be available on the conference program page. We encourage you to share your experience using the hashtag APNIC60. And finally, please join us for the opening social this evening. The event will be at the Ocean Ballroom of this hotel at 7 p.m. Drinks will be served from 6:30 p.m. Thank you all, and we wish you a successful and enjoyable APNIC 60. Tạm biệt, hẹn gặp lại. Goodbye and see you again.